question, Sarah Lee. Hey guys, you are here. Thank you. Thank you. This is having some technical difficulties today. I'm trying to pass along this information. Jeff's internet is down, so um, we are pivoting hard right now.
Okay. I
Um,
posted a link in the
oh, thank you.
encouragement.
Thank
I did
you.
that too, Christian.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Sean, good to see you. Sorry, I'm gonna have to be your MC and host. Was one thing we can do is take the recording and broadcast. Okay, cool. So we're having some technical difficulties. Angela, welcome. Welcome. We're just we're making it work today with technology. So I apologize. Well, I know we're running behind here. We are likely just going to stay in this Zoom meeting the entire time for Q&A. It's going to be a little bit different just because I'm running it. So we'll get caught up here as people start to flow in. In the meantime, if there were questions yesterday that didn't get answered, or questions from the homework, or just in general, I think Ryan had a good question yesterday, something about contractors and demanding all pictures. I wanted to go ahead and answer that once we get going here. Okay, we're good there. Posted it in LinkedIn. Good.
Zach,
What's that?
related to that last question, I know that in the front end of some specs, I don't know if it's a CIS standard or whatever, CSI, but there's a spec for actually photographic documentation where you, in theory, ask the contractor to take pictures of progress all the time.
Right.
Should we not have that? Because then someone could also claim that we got the photos, we saw it, we didn't say anything.
That's a good question. And I would probably, that would be a Steve Litchfield question, because all of the advice that I offer, I'll always put a disclaimer on it, right? It's my advice based on best practices, based on what we've seen. But if there are specific, laws or specific guidelines that the entities are throwing down there, before we go in and try to violate anything like that, we want to make sure that we know exactly what we're doing there. So I'd have to say I don't know, unfortunately. But it's a really good question. It's something that I want to spend some time on. My goal for each of these, this has actually been really fun for me. It has been definitely a little bit of stress because it's forced us to put all of this information together in kind of a format that we didn't really have it. We do kind of one-off talks, or I've done all 4 of these combined down into an hour. So we're only spending 15 minutes on each of them, not a full, hour plus Q&A. But it has opened up the need. I can see where, maybe we're talking about this at a high level here, and this is the 101 version. Well, let's go into the more advanced version, right? And we can, it's lending itself to much more content that we need to be able to create, which is great. Those are great problems to have. But we need to go create them now. LaShawn says, I don't see an audio button. I'm just going to push everybody allowed to talk. Frankly, I am much more comfortable if you guys just kind of chime in and say, hey, what about this? What about that? It's a little easier for me. There we go. So as people start to filter in, you'll see we're going to just kind of treat this a little bit more like a Zoom meeting. It is recording, and I do believe it will broadcast live. If you're just joining us, Jeff was having some issues. We were having issues with Restream. He's gotten issues with his internet for some reason. And so that's why we moved this on here. And so I will probably do a terrible job, but I'll try to be your MC and your chief educator today. But it looks like we've got some people doing well. I'll ask again. So any questions from yesterday before we kind of jump into the day 4, which is communication and documentation? Huge topic. Each one of them could probably stand alone by themselves. Anything from any of the first 3 days, but we had a really great Q&A if you were there yesterday on site visits, and I think a lot of it's centered around phones and some kind of war stories and what to do there. There we go. This is setting. Yeah, I think LaShawn, you should be able to talk now. And
Well, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Does OSHA apply to us as architects? Like I saw a post of somebody who got reprimanded for not wearing steel-toed boots or something. Yep. Do I have to wear steel-toed boots?
Yes, it does. And yes, so site safety plan, we never want to be responsible for site safety plans as an architect. We absolutely need to follow the site safety plan though, right? And the contractor will generally be the one to create that, maybe the owner of the project. You want to be in compliance with that. And the only step where site safety, where you might take it on, would be you would be willing to be responsible for your team, right? If you've got other employees out on the site with you, or it could extend as far as your subconsultants, right? If you're doing a walk and you've got your structural engineer there, maybe it could extend that far. But I definitely don't want to be responsible for any of the construction workers or any of the other disciplines out there that are not under direct contract for me. But I need to follow the protocol. If it's hard hats and steel toe boots, that's what it needs to be. If it's vests in a COVID world, right? In fact, almost exactly 2 years ago, we were having very interesting conversations around site visits, which was, if you were going to go out to a site, what did PPE even look like? I mean, was it a paper mask? Was it an N95 mask? Was it head to toe, full on, long sleeves, gloves, the whole deal? Because, if you remember in May of 2020, we didn't quite have as good an understanding, still probably don't, but of what would warrant, what would spread COVID-19. And so that, a lot of people were putting safety plans in place, which were head to toe, fully clothed. And then as you step off site, everything into a bag, and then that bag either gets washed or thrown away. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Does it mean that we need to take a class about it if we don't know the specifics?
Yeah. So it would be worth, and there definitely those classes are available. I would always double check, if you want to get a copy of the safety plan from the contractor ahead of time to make sure that you're complying. And if you're unfamiliar with some of the standards, shoot them a note, right? Say, hey, what do you mean by this? What is this? This says this specific type of boot, right? Does that mean any steel toe boot? Am I good there? I would double check with them. But yeah, taking a class isn't a bad idea. And OSHA, we don't typically think of OSHA, when we're talking about design. That tends to be a more construction, we're worried about that, but OSHA does come into play, and OSHA they can fine you. And they're typically not expensive fines. It's more of the fact that the reprimand is on record for your firm, right? When that's not something you want.
Not to be funny, and my apologies to my female friends, but I have seen posts in Anti-Architects about women who still prefer to wear heels to the job site. So in my opinion, that's stupid. No offense again. But in addition to being stupid, is it illegal? Is it something you could be fined for?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. It would probably depend on the guidelines of the site safety plan. I wouldn't advise it. Obviously, doesn't seem like it would make sense. But if the safety plan is not calling for a specific type of footwear, I don't think it's illegal. I wouldn't want to ask my team to go out and I would want to be prepared. How about that? I would want to be as prepared as possible and understand that construction sites are dangerous places, right? They are dangerous places, right? We've done a much better job over the last 20 to 30 years of keeping a construction site safe, but construction still falls in one of the top 5 most dangerous jobs there are, right? Like fishing and roofing. Roofing is part of construction, but there's a lot of moving parts. There's typically a lot of people trying to do a lot of different things, and there's a lot of unfinished things that are hazardous. So, that would be just be prepared, as best prepared as you can be,
yeah.
right?
Go ahead. I don't think I have ever seen a safety plan on single-family residential construction.
True, right. So if we're talking about the smaller projects, yeah, a contractor. Now, maybe a contractor has a general plan, right? If they're doing, if that's your standard project type as an architect, and maybe you're working with a similar contractor, same contractor for a bunch of these, I bet there is some type of general procedure that they would have. Maybe it wouldn't be site specific, but they need to have something like that in general in place. And so you could ask for a copy of that.
Okay, I hereby promise not to wear heels to it.
Good. There we go. Jeff, if you're there, I think I got you. So you're allowed to talk.
Here.
There we go.
I'm here. Since you went down that route, Christian, I have heard from some of my female architect friends, that there is at least one company out there that it's a female-owned company. I don't know if she is or was an architect, but somehow related to the AEC world, and she's designing and making. Apologies if this is offensive, but making fashionable steel-toed shoes.
Yeah. It's Juno Jones is the thing, and it was and it was a start. What's the thing when everybody puts in money? It was
like crowdfunding.
Yeah, so she did that, so I got in on that. You put in so much money, and then you got a pair of the boots. So
Kickstarter. Is Kickstarter something like that?
Yeah, like Kickstarter.
Kickstarter. Thank you, Kickstarter. Yeah, it was a Kickstarter, and it's Juno Jones, and now they're coming out with another one. They have the zip ones on the side, and the thing is that they're smaller, right? They're formed more for women's feet and not men's feet, so they fit a little bit better.
Hey, I like fashionable shoes.
Well, they still look like work boots. I mean,
as an aside, I just want to say that even though Zoom is telling me on a tiny font on the top of my screen, I love that we're able to recognize each other's voices without seeing who it is on camera.
That's probably because of Clubhouse, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Or because you know him.
Or it's because your mic and your computer are linked, and it says your name, so it knows you're transmitting.
Right. My voice is kind of funny today because I'm sick, but I'll try.
It is, from a speaker standpoint, it is so much easier to hear your voices, because the alternative when you're on Restream as a guest is that I'm looking at Jeff, I'm talking, and then comments are just filtering in, and I kind of have an idea of where I want to go, but I'm also distracted, and I'm also easily distracted. So this is just a little bit easier makeup to be able to.
We need artificial intelligence to solve that problem.
I know, right? Where's the AI? Jeff, I just promoted you to a panelist. I'm not sure if you have that capabilities yet, but if I know we didn't do a whole lot of like intros and things like that, and I apologize, but we are running a little bit behind. So if we're good, if we want to jump into communication and documentation.
I think so. I think your camera is. I don't see anybody's camera on. I don't see your camera on.
You don't see mine on? Can you guys see me?
No.
Yeah, I can see you, Zach.
Okay.
The functionality.
I can see you. I don't have the video thing.
I can
see
Jeff, but only you.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
I did this in.
Now
I can see
there you go, Jeff.
Okay.
There we go.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
All right. Well, apologies for the technical difficulty. We're going to take this later, and for anybody that misses this session, we'll rebroadcast it via Restream. So it'll be out there. It'll go into the Facebook group, etc. So that's our workaround for that, I suppose. And we'll go backstage here in a little bit as usual. So all that being said, I don't want to take up, as Zach said, I don't want to take up too much more time because we've lost a lot. John says I may need a router reboot. Yeah, we had a complete loss of internet, including cellular internet for a while. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on around here. But welcome to day 4.
Yeah.
Hey,
Communication. What happens when we lose all
when we lose all
ability to
communication?
communicate?
Oh, I love it.
Take it away, Mike.
All right. So we are on day 4. Of the 4 S's, we've done signing. We did 2 days on that. We've done seeing yesterday, and then now we are in the sending and saving portion, which is 2 very broad topics. And frankly, the amount of time we're going to spend on them, we're just going to scratch the surface. But we'll do our best here. So disclaimers. Actually, an interesting thing. The majority of claims that we see now on professional liability policies for architects are not rooted in technical error, right? They are not a drawing mistake on the part of the designer. They are in non-technical areas, and these 2, communication and documentation, being 2 of the biggest, and which that should give us some. I mean, that might be shocking. It was a little shocking to me, but hopefully that gives us a little bit of hope because they're correctable, right? They're easy. It means that our QA/QC processes are working very well, and we have programs like, CAD, Revit, all these things that have built-in QA/QC, and so that seems to be getting better. But communicating with our clients, communicating with our project team, and communicating with our team, our employees, is a challenge, right? It is a challenge in this day and age. We're going to spend a good chunk of time on email and what email should be used for. And we're going to go down the path that we did yesterday with phones, which is email discoverable? Spoiler alert, it is, absolutely. Be careful of the emails that you write, especially internally. Everything else that is internal communications, if you've got a team, Slack is discoverable. Chat functions like we are here right now in this Zoom meeting are discoverable. Recorded meetings, if we're doing that with the clients, are discoverable. So we want to be very, very, I'm going to use that word intentional again. We want to be very intentional about the way that we are communicating with everyone around us, because I've got some really scary bad examples of communication today that were found in claims. And when I read them to you, you'll probably go, ooh, the last one in particular, like, oh, I would never write that. I'm like, I hope you wouldn't. I really hope. But we're guilty, especially, of people that we're comfortable with and people that we trust. We're guilty of saying things in offhand ways. But the problem is this age of the internet, that stuff is findable. It is discoverable. So I said, what do we mean by communication? We're talking about talking and emailing with your client, how you prepare and meet with your team, and then how you communicate. What are the methods and means, and what are you saying to the project team? And then in documentation, we're going to think about this in 3 ways, and then a policy at the end. My first form of documentation is a contract. Right, that is the number one form of documenting what we went through this already this week. The scope of services, right? What we have agreed to, was it fair? And hopefully it's insurable. we didn't spend too much time on warranties and guarantees, but those are typically the phrases in a contract that are going to make them uninsurable. Christian's putting beware of reply all. We're going to get to that, Christian. That is absolutely one of the scariest things. And I'm sure we all have a story of somebody that's hit reply all to an email and you're just like, oh man. And we'll share some of those. Second form of documentation is absolutely emails, right? What should be in an email, what should be a phone call. A third form of documentation is going to be a memo to the file, right? How are we documenting this so that 2 to 3 years from now, we can tell an accurate story and get ourselves out of a claim if we aren't meant to be there. And that is super common from architects. I think we covered that a little bit already this week, but I would venture to say, I'm making up a number here, but 50% of the claims I see naming an architect had nothing to do with the actual architect themselves. They were just attached to the project, and or it was to do with a sub-consultant, and so they're the prime and they get pulled in, right? So when we're documenting all these things, we're doing our future selves a favor, because even though we're all really, really busy right now, and it seems to be like, you're juggling too many projects at once, or you just got a lot of things on your plate, 2 years from now, you're going to very, very much wish that you wrote down everything you possibly could when you get some email that's a litigation hold for all your documents, you get some client who is unhappy, get some third party that's bringing a lawsuit against everybody, and you're going to have to explain now your side of it, right? And so we got a little bit into documentation in terms of the photos yesterday's and site visits, but we're going to talk a lot more about emails today and what should be in an email. And selfishly, as a person who is partially dyslexic or slightly dyslexic, just writing emails that make sense and not not big block emails. Emails are meant to be a way to convey information, but they are not meant to be a novel. So that's maybe just a personal pet peeve, but. All right. So how do you talk to your clients? What we spent a good amount of time on this yesterday in the Q&A, and what is the method that I should be talking with them? We've talked about this on Tuesday with scope creep and this email confirmation back. If I am friendly with my client, which is a great thing, I need to confirm everything in an email. I really, really, really need to confirm everything in an email. This is actually, we run into this sometimes. Let's go back as far as contracts. Has anybody here ever taken on a project in a completely verbal contract? Go ahead and you can just write yes or no in the chat. Have we ever? Yeah, okay. Have we ever? Because we're familiar with the person, because it's small, because it's there's a number of different reasons, but have we ever done a verbal contract? And I'm not calling anybody out here, because that these things happen, and years ago it was a little more accepted, but it happens, right? Well, that same level of familiarity can cause us problems on scope creep, right? When we're standing there, we were talking to Fred yesterday in the Q&A, and he's got a project that's like on his street, and I can just imagine, it's Saturday morning at the site, and the owner says, hey, this is really good, but I think I want to add a carport to it, right? Okay, great. Off the top of my head, I can't tell you exactly how much that's going to cost, and what the amount of time it's going to take, but I really, really need to, if I'm Fred, go back in an email and confirm back what we said, because did we just increase our scope? Did our scope just creep? Absolutely. Does the client fully understand the timeline and the monetary obligations of what they said? Well, maybe if they see that, maybe we're not quite as serious. Maybe they thought, hey, that's only going to be an extra $2,000, and you're like, no, that's more like $10,000, right? So does that type of stuff need to be followed up? Do we need to document that? Absolutely. Flip side of that, we got into conversations around, well, what if it's a really small project, right? What if it's interior design, I think was the example yesterday, and it's a small fee, and Zach, do I need to over document everything? And that's where I'll say, use your appropriate, use your judgment, right? Some documentation is always better than none. unless that documentation is me complaining about the client, which we would never hopefully put in the project file, but some documentation is always better than none. But I need to be able to recreate my story. I need to be able to tell a judge, a jury, as the other side's attorney, exactly what I was thinking here. And if I can do that, And if I can do that fairly easily, it's easy to get out of these things. It's like, okay, well, next, right? On to the next. Now we're on to the structural engineer. If I can't do that, at minimum, I've opened myself up to a lot of extra time spent in depositions and, you know, in stuck up in the court case. And we finished our Q&A session yesterday with just how miserable it is to be involved in a claim. The back and forth aside, just the mental anguish and stress that it causes, and then the resources, right? You're out. So if you're a sole proprietor and you rely on your income to keep the lights on, feed your family, do all these things, and now somebody's pulled you into a claim, you're having to focus on that claim. It's akin to jury duty, right? And it's jury duty where you're not getting paid while you're on the jury. So it's why a lot of people don't like jury duty. But imagine, okay, now you've got this really stressful thing, you're being sued, and on top of that, you can't go do your normal work because you're having to deal with this thing on your plate. So documentation. Let's get into a couple emails real quick. And these are from a presentation that I took notes on years ago. It's from a great insurance company, and these are specifically from claims that had happened to this insurance company. And so when I read you these phrases, these are not made up. These were real things that they found. So the question is, which email comment is from an actual claim or dispute? Spoiler alert, it's all of them. Number one, Sam, the client, is light years past difficult. Number two, a design not fully complying with the code does not necessarily mean it will fail. Number three, we do not have enough qualified engineers to staff this project. And number four, we need to increase the value of these work scope variances as much as possible without getting caught. Oh boy. Can you imagine if that was your documentation, number four there, and this is going to get read in front of a judge, jury, and arbitrator, and you're like, well, what did you mean by that? Right? It's brutal. These things come to light, and we talked about this with the text messages yesterday and the taking the photos for site visits. But so many things get put in email and in text message that we had no intention of other people seeing. Right? That's just the truth. When I worked at a much larger firm, I was guilty as sin of this because you have your coworkers and you like to maybe message jokes back and forth, and even if they're not at anybody else's expense, that's going to get called into play if they take my phone, right? And if they're trying to make a character case against me, and there's hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line, could they point to something that I said that was an offhand comment and start to dive in really deep and say, what did you tell me, Zach? What did you mean by that? Right? Absolutely, they could. So this is my last one, and then we'll stop the reading here. This is a $300,000 email right here. And this is a claim that actually happened. I spoiled it for the group in the Q&A yesterday, but let me see here. Where did it go? Here you go. John, good to see you on site today. I want to substitute the valve that you specified to the A-E4730 model. Please confirm that we can make the change and let me know if you're free for lunch on Thursday. Does anybody remember what the response was? Yes. John replied yes. So this first party took that to mean yes to both. They went ahead and replaced the valve with the model that they were offering. It didn't turn out to be the right thing, and it caused $300,000 worth of non-conforming construction that needed to be rectified. Something as simple as that. Yes, the proper answer. Yes to lunch. Let me check on the valve. Right? So super simple, but we are just moving so quickly. And we probably didn't think too much about that. And we got into this a little bit yesterday in the Q&A as well, where we've all had these things where we've had an interaction, and then either seconds later or maybe even minutes or hours later, you think to yourself, oh boy, like that was not, I didn't spend the time to be as specific with that as I want to. And that could cause me some problems. And the answer to that is, if you feel that way, it's not too late. Even if it's a day late, a week late, I can send a follow-up email and say, hey, Jeff, just to confirm, when we talked that day, I said this. It occurred to me that I wasn't specific enough, and I want to say XYZ, right? Whatever it is, and get your CYA email in there, right? Your cover your tail email in there. And that is, even if it's late, it's better late than never, because for this reason that this claim turned out to be $300,000, right? I bet John really, really wishes he had taken the time to text or email 5 extra words, right? So those are my email horror stories. What should email be used for? Email should be used to confirm things. If you're negotiating, and I think we are all guilty of this, but I am definitely guilty of this with being involved in client communication, and with trying to help our clients negotiate stuff, which is we are so reliant on email that we go back and forth 18 different times, when if we had picked up the phone, it could have been a 20-minute conversation, right? And I think the average person right now in business gets like 150 emails a day. And so as convenient as it can be, because you can answer emails at odd hours, or, it's right there on your phone. And so if you're in between time or whatnot, a lot of things are not meant to be hashed out in email. They're meant to be confirmed in email. And I think it's up to you in terms of what those things are, that you're kind of going to have to write your own procedures there. But I would think a lot about that, where being able to communicate with your client on the phone, you're going to be able to pick up a lot more in terms of their tone. If you're in person, you can pick up their tone and their body language. You're going to understand things a little bit better. Some people who mean very, very well write very professionally, or write very what I would call kind of dry, and that can be misconstrued, right? Just reading it, because I'm reading it through my own frame of mind. Those types of things have caused claims in the past. What else there? Email. I'm looking at the comments here. The difference between people who are writing an email sitting there at the desk, and an email yelling to dictate. Yeah. I know of an attorney who's in the AE space. He's got 3 personal assistants, executive assistants, that work around the clock. So each of them has an 8-hour shift, and they work, because he works all crazy hours of the night and he doesn't type. And so he'll hop on the phone and he'll call them to dictate all of his emails and dictate his case files and all this stuff. That sounds so absurd to me, but I've heard that from a few different people that's how he operates. So there's a quick question there from Benita. What if a project closes off mid-document phase, client sold off the project property, didn't ask for any closeout document? Should we as architects need to have a document in place? Yeah, I think so. I'd like to be able to document exactly what happened, even if it's just a memo to the file, right? Doesn't sound like that's going to come back, but if it did, or if it could, I'm very, very leery of the story that we heard on Tuesday from the gentleman in the Q&A, which was, I got brought into a lawsuit on a project I didn't even win. And that's a very real thing, right? Which is, I know that we think that certain things, it's like, okay, it's an abandoned project, we don't have to worry about it anymore. But sometimes abandoned projects get resurrected, or sometimes bad things happen on job sites, and we get called in, we get questioned about it, right? And so taking good notes takes a lot of time. It's something that you need to set aside a good chunk of time for. We were talking about the site visits yesterday. When you go out to a site visit, have you blocked out an hour when you get back to the office or get home to document everything that you saw, right? Most of the time, probably not, right? Maybe not that long, or maybe it's being done the next day. But taking good notes, I think, is a very, very valuable skill, and we harped on that a little bit yesterday. So an email should suffice, or a signed document is preferred. Signed document for what, Benita? What were we? I need a little more info there. What about texting? I tried to avoid it, but something, yeah, clients, that's a good question. I've run into this actually. The way I've run into this is I pay for Ring Central. Ring Central is it's a service. You can get a phone number. It's an app on your phone. It allows for texting. It also saves all my texts, and those are all through my work number. So if you want to text me at my work number, I'm comfortable with that. I've worked at large firms that are like, absolutely, you cannot text your clients, but I'm comfortable with that. It's just, that's how I keep it separate. And will that hold up in court? That was a big question yesterday. I hope so. I'm not 100% positive, but I hope so. I think it's a pretty clear line there that I did this for a very specific reason. These people that text me at this number are only about business, and therefore, if you want to get all the other text messages that are there, that's fine. They're all going to be about work. But yeah, texting, and we don't have some of the younger generations on this call. The younger generations are even more reliant on texting, and even more reliant on email, and less comfortable. And I'm making a sweeping broad generalization. I get that, and I'll take full responsibility for that. But the younger folks today just seem to be more comfortable in a typed out media where they can kind of come and ascend as they feel comfortable on their own timeline. It means that there are fewer phone conversations going on, though. It means that it's a little bit harder to get somebody to say, hey, just pick up the phone and call Jeff real quick. Just ask him this, right? It's not as common as it used to be. Am I saying you're old? No, I'm not saying that. I would fall into that category, and I'm not willing to put myself in that category yet. So I am not saying that we are old, but what else? So, okay, we've talked a little bit about email. We've talked a little bit about documentation. Like I said in the beginning, this is a massive, massive subject. And so we're only scratching the surface at what we're going to get to here today. We spent a lot of time yesterday on documenting the site with photos, right? We had our 3-foot and 300-foot rule, right? Get up close to take a photo, or step all the way back across the street, get a full shot of the project site. What warrants a phone call? I would say if you have to ask that question, it warrants a phone call. That's just kind of a rule of thumb, right? If it's a what if, and as an insurance broker, we get these sometimes. Now, I understand that as a broker and a risk manager, I don't have attorney-client privilege with my clients. So the way that some of those things will be asked is, Zach, I'm not saying that this is what happened, but have you ever heard of a case where somebody did something like this? And if we're talking in hypotheticals, then I can tell you exactly what I've heard, or maybe what I would do in that hypothetical situation. Having a great attorney that you work with is vital. Finding somebody out there, having that person, this is just kind of a pro tip, if you will, having that person named on your insurance policy as the attorney that you will be able to work with if something does go sideways saves so much time and stress. Because if it's the difference of, like I think Benita's on this call. Benita is a client of mine, and Benita also has an attorney, right? She has a relationship with an attorney, which is great. And what that means is if anything were to go sideways, that would be the first attorney we would want to go to and say, hey, this person, this firm, you're familiar, you've seen some of the contracts, right? We've already had established a relationship, meaning once we get some claim in, some pre-claim, whatever it is, we don't have to go through all of that beginning, getting to know each other phase. We can just get right in it, and get rolling on whatever it is that we need to take care of. And when you're stressed out, when you get this letter in the mail that's accusing you of something, that's a pretty handy thing to do, right? So I know Steve Litchfield, I will praise him until the cows come home, but they do a thing with their office where you can have a retainer that you don't pay anything for, and then it's just kind of on an ad hoc basis. Setting up something like that, maybe with somebody that you're comfortable with, somebody in your state. If you need referrals, I can absolutely introduce you to those people. But it's just nice. It's just really nice to have It's like having a mechanic in place when your car is almost totaled. It's like, I just know where I'm going to go with this. I know they're going to be honest with me. I don't have to worry about these things. So a little off topic there, but I wanted to touch on, I know we're going over on our time here and we're going to jump into Q&A, but circumstances reporting and lessons learned meeting. So circumstance reporting, if you have a professional liability policy and it's specific, it's meant for an architect or an engineer, it should allow for circumstance reporting, which is pre-claims assistance. And what that is smoke but no fire. That is, it seems like something is wrong here, and maybe it's just as simple as my client has gone dark on me, right? Maybe my client hasn't paid me. Maybe, you know, there's a bunch of different scenarios you can go there, but I want to get my insurance broker and my attorney involved quickly. I want to let my insurance company know, and that pre-claims assistance, that circumstance reporting, it should not count against your deductible. It'll be free, and it will help the process so much more than if you sit on it, know about something, it turns into a claim, and then now you have to turn in that claim. Attorneys or insurance companies will not penalize you for pre-claims assistance. They would rather, heard them say this, they would rather have 5 pre-claims that don't turn into an actual claim than one actual claim where we could have gotten out in front of it. So from a documentation standpoint, if you get something that seems a little fishy, it's not a clear demand for money or services, but let your insurance broker know, let your attorney know, let your insurance company know, and that you shouldn't be penalized for that. The last part is lessons learned meeting. This is a little bit more for if you have employees, but if you're part of the Entree community, I would recommend maybe finding a buddy and doing this, where when you finish a project, right, at the end of it, we want to see what we did right and what we did wrong, right? We want to see lessons learned. I don't want to do this as an email. I don't want to do this as a documented, written out, savable document. So my recommendations for my firms that have employees are, it's Friday afternoon, maybe you're in the office, get a whiteboard, get a pizza, maybe some adult beverages, who knows, and sit there and verbally talk through what went right, what went wrong, what can we do better next time. And you'd be surprised that that's a culture building, rapport building meeting for your employees. It's a great way for your younger and more junior employees to learn. It's an opportunity for you to be a little bit vulnerable if there's something that you would have done better. That's never a bad thing to share with your employees. We don't want it on, I don't want it on file though, because if something comes back and maybe we had a very small lesson learned, I don't want some attorney to take that and try to flip it into something much bigger, kind of what we were getting into before, which is, well, what did you mean by this? So we do it on a whiteboard, we do it verbally in our conference room, we do it over pizza, and then, you know, we file it away and we get better for the next one. So with that, I think I've rambled a whole lot, Jeff.
Well, yeah, and I know we're past time, but you know, with all the difficulties at the beginning, I wanted to let it run for a minute. Christian asked, maybe if it's possible to address this before we wrap it up. Christian asked about meeting minutes.
Yeah,
and I know this really sort of came out of yesterday as well. Christian, do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Yeah, yesterday we were talking about who writes the meeting minutes, but then Chris mentioned that he was taught not to call them meeting minutes, but meeting notes. And I don't know if it makes a difference what you call them. And I'd like to know what should be in the meeting minutes, what should not be in the meeting minutes, and who should write them.
That's a good question. And this is one of those, it's going to vary widely based on the size of the project, right? Is this a $350 million building in San Francisco where we've got, 40 people in the meeting and 1,000 people on site? It's going to look a lot different than if this is just, me and the client and the contractor sitting in a room, right? So, I haven't heard that distinction between meeting minutes and meeting notes. I am a fan of semantics though, and so maybe that does make sense. I will say the best advice I have heard is if you are in a meeting and they start to talk about topics that are not pertinent to you, and I'm thinking site safety here, means and methods, things like that, you could go as far as a design professional and excuse yourself from the meeting to be excused from the meeting minutes. And then you could go as far as to email back and say, when so-and-so started to talk about site safety, I excused myself and did not take part in that part of the meeting. And that's maybe that's extreme. Again, use your judgment on, how big a project we're talking here. If there's two of you in the meeting, you're not going to be able to excuse yourself, right? But typically, I don't think it's the architect's responsibility to take meeting minutes. And I would want to make sure that, when I'm going to get back to that word, intentional, right? What is our plan? What were the reasonings behind having this meeting? And then let's stay on topic here. And if it's going to get off topic, if it's going to get into an area that doesn't involve me and frankly shouldn't involve me, I either will end the meeting, my portion of the meeting early, and then you guys can continue on, or I'll step out, and maybe walk the site a little bit while you're doing that. But yeah, that's a good question.
Well, those are good points. Even though I don't enjoy writing them,
yeah,
I like controlling the narrative and making sure that what I care about is recorded, and what I don't care about, I don't mind if it's not there. But
yeah, it is. I mean, you're right. It is a level of control, which is if the whole point is to be able to tell our story, if you're going to control the meeting minutes, in theory, you're telling your story, right? Maybe it's a lot of extra work, again, depending on the size, right? Depending on the size of the project. So, but maybe that wouldn't be a bad thing. That was a good question.
All right. And of course, we're gonna head backstage here momentarily, and so we can continue the Q&A.
Deal.
So we'll do that same link as you have for all the other days for from the VIP access. A reminder. So first of all, thank you for doing your homework. So a bunch of people posted.
Nice.
I think it was Jefferson's suggestion that we post the homework in the comments under the video for that day, and I think that worked out really well. I saw a lot of people posting there, so thank you for that. My encouragement to everybody is, as you have time, go back through and see what other people posted. Maybe you even comment on others or ask questions related to others, and of course post your own. This is all about a learning community, and that's what we have here. So thanks in advance for all of that. I didn't get it there yet, but I will, before we're done with the backstage, I will have the day 4 homework posted to both of the Facebook groups. And of course, if you registered for the challenge, meaning you went to entrearchitect.com/challenge, you didn't have to do that, but that was a way to get everything emailed to you. So if you did that, the day 4 homework should come to you via email very soon if it hasn't already. And as it has been the last few days, it's straightforward, just 2 questions. Look through your email inbox. Are there any emails that should have been a phone call, and why? And the second is, has there been a phone call that should have been followed up? That's a really good distinction. That should have been followed up with an email. So that's the homework for the day. Sarah Lee says that she has already received her day 4 homework via email. So that means probably that everyone that registered to get it that way has received it. So thank you for that heads up.
Perfect.
Sarah Lee, that's that. Again, thanks, Zach. Appreciate you bringing a reminder.
Absolutely.
I know our group is a little bit smaller here because of the technical difficulties. I will rebroadcast this recording via Restream to all the platforms. It'll probably have to be this evening because we've got Context and Clarity Live coming up, and so that would interfere. So probably at some point this evening, I will rebroadcast this. So anybody that you know that has been participating that may have missed this, again, it is sort of a dumpster fire there at the beginning. And I'll post about this, but I'll be able to catch it. All right. Day 5 tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern, as usual, 10 a.m. Pacific, hopefully without the technical difficulties tomorrow. And we're going to head backstage now.
All right.
Join us back there in just a few minutes as we get switched over. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
All right.